have 3 films in the festival this year, including films from this year. Pacifiction, which has a Q&A tonight, and Lynch Oz, which had its first screening last night. So in, kind of piggybacking then on Lynch Oz and the reference to The Wizard of Oz being such an inspiration to a very young David Lynch, and even moreover a young kind of universal body of audience, new kids coming into the scene. What was the first film that you saw that really kind of expanded your mind about the film's capacity to be magic? And also then, what film made you want to be a filmmaker?
Well, I start? Sure. Okay. I don't know. I mean, it was not about filmmaking in my case. I mean, it was hardcore cinephile, but I wanted to study literature at the beginning. I studied literature in the university. I never attended film school or anything like this. So it was just a little bit by chance at the beginning of digital technology in the 2000, when I decided that I could become a filmmaker because you didn't need anybody else. You could do it with your own friends or with this little technology, so it was easy, and there was you don't need a great knowledge on cinema language to start doing films. It's quite easy. You see films now, it's becoming more complex with contemporary cinema in the last 10 or 15 years, but before that, all films were more or less, except obviously all the nouvelle vague things or some things that are on the border with I don't know, video art or some experimental things. But in general, normal filmmaking was like, 19th century novels, was very basic, very simple. And so it was just because of this digital technology that could make it funnier. This was the main point for me. I was influenced by a lot of films from the 60s, filmmakers, the attitude of filmmakers from the 60s, that this came also from the avant-garde artists from the beginning of 20th century, so it was this attitude where, and there is this playful side of doing things that is mixed with, but it was forbidden in cinema because it was a big industry, and the idea of making a film was so difficult because of the technology of 35 millimeters that it makes professionalism more or less necessary. People from the Nouvelle Vague and made rebellion against it with 16 millimeter camera, with portable sound devices, blah blah blah, and they tried to broke this this submission to this strong technology that make that make it boring, make it like working in a factory somehow. So I was never interested in this idea of studios of Hollywood or all these films, only in the avant-garde films and avant-garde attitude, and especially because of the playful side of it. So digital technology was cheap, was easygoing, and then life was really connected, and there was like a transparent link between life and art. Cinema is already this. You shoot something, I put a camera here or that camera, and it's already a film. We don't need to do anything special. It will be a film, good or bad, but a film at the end. So this is tautological approach, and it's very, depends on how interesting is your life somehow, and of course, with modern cinema, as I said before, contemporary cinema, the tools we have, especially not only with digital cameras, but of course with digital cameras, but also with digital computers, with edit programs that are really, something very important, that it started to be extremely precise not so long ago. It was 15 years ago, where you can have at home and you can have all the rushes in one single computer, one single hard disk, and the possibility of mixing all images, of making all possible combinations. This is quite new. I mean, it's 15 years ago. All the filmmakers that people, I don't know, for me it's boring. I mean, all Scorsese films all Coppola films, Kubrick films. This is very boring. I mean, it's totally, you know, I am not interested at all in anything of these images or these films of these people. So, because it's predictable, it's boring, there is nothing interesting there. And then, okay, but with digital technology, we realized that it was very easy to start, you know, making things that are really on the edge of something different, of something really, really unknown. That the mystery, you know, it's next to it. And of course, I don't know if I have to say one name or several names. For example, Warhol was a great influence on me because, you know, especially in the idea of directing actors, you know, this idea that these three units of, you know, the person, the actor, that is the person with the vanity of being shooted, and the character, which is the key lecture on the film, you know, this is a unit. One single unit divided in three, but you know, you can never, you know, make a difference in the orders of these three units. You know, you have the same body, and you have the person, the actor, and the character, and it's inside the same body. So then it started to, you know, and with digital, because at that time it was very, well, sorry, I'm very long, but in Warhol or previous times, even in Nouvelle Vague films, that they explore a little bit these limits. But it was very primary, it was very basic, because there was no digital technology, so you couldn't hide all the traces of these inner fights inside images. But now with digital technology, you can be much more sophisticated, and you can hide all the traces, and everything can be really in an envelope, in a nice envelope, where this fight exists, and it's really lively, and you know, also you can combine it with sophisticated edit somehow, and I don't know, it's really what we can have best with moving image. It's what we can have in contemporary cinema with the great interesting. There is nothing in art wall, it's boring, you know, video art nowadays is totally stupid. You know, I don't know, commercial cinema, it's over somehow. It's only, you know, Hollywood big film superheroes just for people, childish content. And then there is platforms that you know, it's totally predictable, and they want people to be addicted and with easygoing, you know, tricks. They don't allow poetry, they don't allow anything, you know, difficult. So, and in fact, it's in the field of cinema where moving image, it's for me, it's amazing, you know, there is a lot of names all around the world, and they are doing great things, and they really go in deep, and most of them, it's linked with digital technology. Even if normal filmmakers, they use digital technology as it was used in the, you know, if they were 35, they still have the unity of a shot, and they prepare shots, and it's a, you know, very simple narrative. But in general, when you go in deep, and I think that somehow we'll talk in the second part, but I went really deep in taking profit or profiting of the potential of digital technology, and we will discuss this later. First of all, because I think that, and with this I finish and I open conversation for later. Since the very beginning, I realized that the eye of the camera, it captures things that are invisible to the eyes. Only digital camera. Because I don't know why, but 35mm camera, what it captures, it's visible. It's too much preparation, it's too much, it's too stupid to really, it's too, I don't know, it's too stupid. You have to prepare too much, and then if there was something possible that could appear, it disappears. It's like inspiration with poets. You know, you cannot push inspiration, it doesn't come, and you have to pick it up when it comes. There is no other way. So digital allows you to pick up this, and I think that really the camera can, most of the qualities of my films are invisible. I was there, I was directing the film, and the best things, I couldn't see it during the shooting. So it's the eye of the camera, and I made a whole, you know, I wrote essays, and now I am writing a book about directing actors that is basically with this idea that the eye of the camera you know, it's for certain things it's more powerful, much more powerful than the eye, human eye of our head. So, and for me, contemporary cinema is based on this, you know, in this fight between the eye of the camera and the eye, and everything concentrated what is in front of both eyes, nothing behind. I mean, no ideas behind the camera. What is important is what is in front. So, but in this fight between these two eyes that are totally different, and for the reason I never used a combo, because it's reducing the potential of, you know, one eye. It's making matching both eyes, which is reducing the potential of both. But okay, this is more complex. Maybe we can go further later.
Yeah, for me, I actually want to start with a memory and talk about a wallpaper, if that makes any sense. So I grew up in Switzerland, in Geneva, and I was very fortunate that my parents, especially my dad, was a cinephile. Really liked to constantly watch movies, and you know, my very first sort of memories that I'm still trying to process in some way, they all took place in front of this sort of pink wallpaper that we had in the living room. And so I have this very profound memory of experiences of being moved by films in front of that wallpaper, so that the wallpaper has become essentially a part of my cinephilia in a way, part of that sort of my interaction with film. And there are two films that have had, among many others, with a very sort of early profound effect on me. One is Vertigo, and for whatever reason, you know, watching Vertigo and the colors of Vertigo juxtaposed with that pink wallpaper is something. And then the other one, I think it must have been very young, maybe like 3 years old, was Eyes Without a Face, Georges Franju. And it's weird because I have this memory of, it was late, my parents were watching it, and you know, I must have needed something or whatever, so I essentially walked in on them watching that film. And the images were so powerful and terrifying that they stayed with me, and they stayed with me for many, many years. Like, I never thought I was going to be a filmmaker, you know? It's quite frankly incredible that I'm just sitting here with you guys, and you know, like every time something like this happens, I'm like, okay, this is weird, you know. But it's because it's really, I consider myself probably more of a cinephile than anything. And it's my deep sort of love for cinema that sort of ultimately led me to do this. But you know, the film Lynch Oz is about those mysteries. It's about this idea that, you know, so David Lowery talks about this in one of the chapters in the film, that there's a handful of films, but it's not just films. It could be paintings, it could be a comic book, it could be a lot of you know, these works that have such a powerful impact on you when you grow up as a kid, that they become a part of your DNA, and that you then become a filmmaker and you start making films, and whether you like it or not, those works are essentially a part. They keep coming up again and again and again, sometimes consciously, in the case obviously of Wild at Heart in David Lynch's, but subconsciously in all of his body of work. And I think, you know, for all of us, but I think that's a beautiful thing. You know, I don't feel like we're trapped by images or trapped by ideas or trapped by films or trapped by motifs, but we are, you know, we keep going back to the well and digging deeper and deeper into that. I think is a beautiful idea.
Hearing you, you know, there is a word that comes to my mind that is the concept of fantasy. You know, that it really is something that inspired you, you know, like artificial fantasy, that it's something that, you know, I always felt, you know, when I was younger, I like Minelli films, for example, Brigadoon or The Bandwagon, you know. There was also the collective side, you know, the idea of collectivity and friendship and blah, blah, blah. But especially for the fantasy side of it, that you understood that cinema was totally artificial, you know. And then, they became, this idea became more vulgar, with all these filmmakers of the 60s or 70s. Some of them were good, but some others not so much. And this idea that it became to get in some realism inside. But in fact, it was not, it was a conventional realism coming from dramaturgy and coming from, cheap tricks. And, I think it's only nowadays that we realize that this fantasy or this artificial context we can really create nowadays, we can really create fantasies out of nothing. The most incredible things are possible to do, and you make believe, and there is still a lot of faith on cinema to believe in what you see in the images, but with digital it can be combined, what it was not the case in the past, with extremely rough and extremely wild performance of actors. So there is a huge contradiction, and I think it's something I try to explore in my cinema. I know just a few other filmmakers that try to create a pure fantasy that it's totally arbitrary, totally, almost insane or absurd on the edge of a lot of, but it's pure fantasy, but at the same time with a huge contrast because the actors are performing in such a wild way that it's a little bit the influence of Warhol, but made in a much more sophisticated way. And I think this point or this moment of, and in David Lynch you have a little bit some moments of that. Yeah. Not all films, not all, but there are some moments that are really intriguing because of that, because you are in a super, artificial context, but the performances are quite weird and not, not conventional, but really wild. And and I think that this can be developed in a more this contrast can be even higher in the future. And I don't know. For me, it's very disturbing because I don't know. It's hyper realistic on the performance of actors, but nothing else. It is so. It's very, and this, I don't know, it came from the fantasy at the beginning of all these Hollywood films of the 50s. But when they pretend to be ambitious, it was boring, all these Scorsese people, and not talented people, so they were not just professionals. And,
I'm curious, talking about your childhood, Albert, and it doesn't have to be fantasy films or, it could be anything, but I'm just really curious about these sort of early images that moved you or that stayed with you or that sort of transported you and that have now a direct impact on you.
No, and there is nothing that lasts.
Really?
No, nothing. Really, nothing. I try to erase all this knowledge, all these images. No, really.
Why? Why do you try to erase it?
Because it's bad influence. It's not a good
It's a bad influence.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's, I don't need it. I did it when it was, it's, you had a simulation process at that time, and that's all. That's enough. You cannot be, I think it's necessary to forget it a little bit, to put some distance on things you love.
So you're saying that you've made the conscious effort to sort of fight those influences.
Yes.
So when you go back to those images, when you go back to those influences...
I never go back.
Why not?
I never had the chance. Maybe if I go to cinema here and there will be, I don't know, Brigadoon copy 35 or whatever, or a good PCP, maybe I will get in. But to watch
you will fight Brigadoon.
Maybe. But you don't have a lot of chances to do this in life. So you are busy with your own things, and I am producer too. I have a lot of work as producer, so it's not. And I like it this way because then it is what I said. Everything grows in your mind, and you adapt to your needs of every moment. So you don't have to confront with reality.
It's fascinating. I've never, now I have to make a film about you at some point. I'm really fascinated by this because I talked obviously to a lot of filmmakers, but it's always these sort of early images and the impact of those images that carries them. But I don't think that I've heard that before. I think it's really cool. It's really interesting.
I don't know. It's what it is. I know a lot of. I said at the beginning I was hardcore cinephile, but I try to forget. It's not useful to create your own images, to think with your images. And I like to watch, I watch contemporary filmmakers. I go to film festivals, people I like, I go to see the films. But it's a pure egoist exercise. It's just to, try to grab and copy something, or try to understand what's going on, or how do they do it. For example, from documentary filmmaking, I like when there is, filmmakers that you really, I don't know. We were talking about Ulrich Seidel before, or I don't know, Wang Bing, or the Chinese, Zhao Liang, or I don't know, the Russians, Rastorgiev, all these people. You don't know how they do these films. I mean, it's even myself that I have a great experience. I mean, working with digital technology and with actors, I don't know how they do it. It's really a mystery even for me. And I am fascinated because I know how difficult it is. And if you see some Wang Bing films, for example, almost all of them, it's quite really, really disturbing also. In another level, because fantasy it's not there, but still, the approach to reality is totally different from what people did in the past. And in the contemporary scene, it's totally different. There is a cut with digital technology from my point of view.
So how did you both get on the track now? Because you have multiple films, you are functioning filmmakers. Go figure.
Functioning, you think?
Functioning. But how did you get from the beginning to this point? And where are you starting in literature? And how did we get here?
Again, just for me, it's really just sort of following what I'm passionate about. I mean, I consider myself, a quote-unquote American independent filmmaker, which is weird because I'm European, but I've been now in the States for 28 years or something. And the people that I work with now, we've been working together for about 15 years. So it's a little sort of little family of people, and we trust each other. And I've been very, very fortunate that they've always, when there's a film that I want to make, they always support that 100%, and we always find a way to get it done, even though we don't necessarily have the budget to begin with to get the film made. We find a way, for me, I feel like one film sort of naturally leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next, because pretty much all the films that I make now are films about film. I mean, people call them documentaries. I don't really like to call them documentaries because they're not documentaries in the traditional sense of the word, but they are about connecting specifically with the films and the filmmakers and the scenes and the sequences that have and continue to have an impact on culture. The psycho shower scene obviously has had a very profound impact and continues to have. I mean, there's a ripple effect of that. And so I'm interested in those moments that have transcended the medium of cinema to become cultural moments, and asking why that is, and essentially then by extension questioning the way that cinema works on our brains, how it influences us, how it obviously creates false narratives as well. In the case of John Ford and the Monument Valley films, that's a whole other thing. I mean, I made a whole film about that specifically. So I'm just very interested in the power of cinema. I mean, the power of cinema is, there's nothing like going in a dark theater, the projector starts and you're enthralled by it, but there's a great danger to that as well. It's a beautiful collective experience. And also these moments, I'll just say one more thing. Moments where the movie affects you physically is very rare. One of the few memories that I have in my lifetime was actually in New York City in 1999, this huge 2,000-seat theater. It was the Blair Witch Project. And the final shot, it was a packed house, and there was literally this wave, this sigh of dread going across the entire movie theater, and I felt it physically. And I walked out onto Times Square just completely disoriented. I didn't sleep that night, I was so freaked out. And I went back the next day to see if that would happen again. And there was the same kind of thing. So, you know, those moments are rare, and it's not necessarily the greatest movies that do that. But when this happens, then you can count me in terms of, as a filmmaker, I want to figure out what's going on here. Why this film? Why now? You know, what's going on?
Well, I don't know. It's very different coming from the States than coming from Europe, you know. In all European countries, you can finance 80% of the film with public money, you don't have to give back, you know, and even the 20%, you know, also you can get something. I mean, so it means that, in fact, you can do whatever you want, you know. Of course, nowadays, and it's becoming more and more difficult because people is becoming more conventional with internet and social net and politically correct and all these things, and on the commissions of people giving money in Europe, you know, there is a new conservative, you know, wave of, you know, people taking decisions, and they are always scared of everything. But in general, we can say that it's a privileged position of being able to, not me, but all the European filmmakers that, you know, if they don't do something more risky or more challenging on the artistic level and the level of language, it's because they are simply scared and they love success more than nothing, and they are really not interested in, you know, because nobody will ask them to give back the money or anything. It's not risky. The only risk you have is not being successful, but it's the only one. There is no money. You have money, you know, risk.
Yeah.
A lot.
Sure.
You know, but I don't have it. So, I mean, with these conditions, it's like living in an ideal world. And I never thought that the pressure of money, you know, obviously still I have a lot of pressure, you know. In every film there is problems of money, and, you know, budgets are always tight, and there is always, you know, problems, and you can never do whatever you want in the way you want. But this is enough, you know. The main problem of having audience at the end that will give you back money to pay the film, you know, this is for me, you know, I never experienced this, and it's a privilege, and I was lucky to have all producers that respected a lot my artistic vision, so I never found anybody. Everybody said, whatever you decide is the best, because we trust what you say, that it's the best for the film, and they were only interested in that. But following, I think that with these conditions you can do whatever you want, and you can go for what you said, what you describe in a very nice way now, that it's a physical impact of a film, because you can only get this on cinema. You never have impact at home, because, so for the reason we are also discussing in the lunch, you know, having this experience, it's when the film is challenging, that you stay at the cinema, you will not leave the cinema. I mean, if the film is challenging and it puts you some difficulties and you don't understand, or it's slow, or there is anticlimax moments, or I don't know, the film puts you a lot of difficulties, but what will you do? You know what you are going to see, you will not leave. I mean, you will stay until the end, so you will fall down, you will, you know, the film will impose you its own logic, its own laws of time, of rhythm, of, I don't know, meanings, of whatever it's decided by the filmmaker. And then you are there and you accept this, and sometimes, and it's, I mean, the physical impact usually, and maybe you will agree with it or not, I don't know, it's with negative sensations, you know? Positive sensations, to be overwhelmed or to be, you know, it's less physical, you know? The physical things is when there is some kind of, you know, not, you know, ugly sensations, things that you don't understand, things that put you on tension.
So horror, obviously.
Not horror, but, you know.
But a lot.
I mean, something that you don't, sometimes when you are in the cinema and you don't understand and you think that, fuck, now it's slow and you want to, you know, or that this kind of tension that puts you inside the body because, you know, you are there and you don't connect somehow, you know, with what's going on the screen, and this puts you in a very, so I like these sensations, you know, and I built a career almost based on these anticlimax moments when there is a physical impact, but only because of ugly sensations of the spectator. So, because it's quite unknown to have this, and then when it seems that it will, it disappears or it transforms in something else, and when you mix it with a lot of liars, that you really don't know what kind of film, what kind of images you are in front of, then it starts to become interesting, because in general it's not pleasant, but then okay, you see that there are some interesting things. So you cannot reject the whole thing, because you see that it's obvious, serious. But I don't know, and I think that for me it's the best, the position of a filmmaker that is allowed to do this is with the finance, with the conditions of film. This is the only reason why I am doing cinema. If it was not in these conditions, I will never do it. I don't need it. I will always go to a US university and they will pay me 200,000 euros to teach. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
I mean, if I do it, it's because, it's because these conditions apply. And these conditions are lucky, we are still in good. We'll see what happens in the future, but now, and good filmmakers, and you can do it cheaper, you can do it, we're talking before that they did the film for 500,000 euro, which is quite a huge amount. Godard was doing the last one for 600,000. So, maybe a little bit more will be better, but 800,000, something like that, it will be perfect budget for some kind of films. But okay, you are doing it in super wealthy countries, everything is expensive. I don't know, this is the problem. The bigger the budget, more conventional the film. That's for sure. There is no escape to this rule, because even in European countries at the end, nobody sees the logic of spending, 12 million in Leos Carax's film or 14 million. It has no point. It will not have any more sense in the future. So it's too much money. Yeah. And you have to do the same for 4 million or 3 million or some other things, even less than 1 million. So I think this logic will apply in the future, and it's a pity that there are, if everybody stay at this reasonable level, it will last forever. But, doing irrational things, it's difficult to to convince power, politicians and all these people to put all this money, and then nobody goes. Everybody goes to Netflix. So he said, why we are putting all this money? And they are right. But of course, what is the reason of Netflix existing? Netflix exists because, films like his films or my films exist. If not, Netflix will never exist. It will not be born. Imagine a world where there is only Netflix. No, in Europe.
That's a depressing world.
It's impossible. It will never happen. So it's Netflix exists because there is some other people that exist before, and then okay, you can allow them to exist, and but if not, nobody will allow them to exist. We will say, what is the point of this if there is not serious cinema to have Netflix? What are we doing? It's like if you only have rock and roll and you don't have opera or serious music. It has no sense.
I think we're now moving into Act 2. Believe it
Are
or
we?
not.
I thought we were already in Act 2.
That's the thing about turning points.
It's a 5-act obviously now.
We moved into a 5-act structure now. So now that we're thinking about, I wanted to ask about funding, of course, so by any means, any kind of insight about funding, but when it comes to starting production, where is kind of the beginning for you? And what is the process of an idea sneaking into your head and it coming to fruition? And when does that film get finished? When do you know you've completed it?
Well, again, for me, it's a different process, obviously, because I make films about film, and the films that I make are always start with obsessively watching a lot of movies. So, I don't really ever have a very distinct recollection of when the process begins. I don't have any memory of the day that I woke up and said, I'm going to make Lynch Oz, or I'm going to make this film about the shower scene. I feel like they're ideas that have been sort of at the back of my mind for quite a while, and over time they start rising and rising, and then eventually it becomes a necessity to make those films because it's kind of an extension of what I've been thinking about for a while, so it becomes a thing. But yeah, I mean, you know, the financing is a part of it. I'm a big believer, and again, that goes back to the, you know, the American indie sort of concept of what I call the train leaving the station. That even if you need, you know, $500,000 to make a film, but you don't have anybody on board yet, I'm a big believer in taking the steps to make people understand that this train, i.e. this film, is about to leave the station. That the train, in fact, is now leaving the station. We're making this film. And we're going to get faster and faster. So you jump on board now if you want to be a part of the film, or we're going to be going so fast that you're going to miss your opportunity. And that's the way that we deal with sales agents. That's the way we deal with investors. That's the way we deal with basically people who can bring us money. And every film is different. And so it's harder to do that in the beginning. I mean, it's never easy. It's a little bit easier now because obviously there's a track record. But every film has a different permutation, combination of people who give us money and who believe in the film. But I think over time now, because I mean I've made Lynch is the 10th feature that I've made, people know that when we say we're going to make a film, we're going to make a film. And so if, you know, when we're starting it and we're presenting the film to investors or you know, streamers, whatever the case may be, they know that we're not bluffing. They know that you know, if we say we're going to aim to premiere in the spring of 2024, that is going to happen. And, you know, knock on wood, we've always found a way to do that. And sometimes that means not paying ourselves. Sometimes it means just enough to pay, you know, the crew, to get people on deferment. You know, it doesn't matter. We just have to find a way. And I like this. I believe in this because it also pushes me and forces me to really realize, is this a film that I really want to make? If I don't really want to make it, then, you know, you don't cut your salary. It's not worth it. So when I commit to something, that means that I really want to make it, and when I really want to make it, then we have to figure out which sacrifices we're willing to make in order to make that film happen.
Yeah, it's a little bit the same idea. Maybe the difference in the European system is that you can have money or more money. Obviously, as you said, every film is different, and the finance, and okay, everything is a matter of trust and to find the right people, and if they see that the train is already departing, you know, they really, you know, believe that you are serious and that the film will be done anyway, so this is good, good always. But the problem in Europe is that you can have more budget or less budget, but when you have more budget, it doesn't mean that it will be more budget for things that will be visible on a screen. Yeah. You know, most of the time you have more budget, but it's to pay things that are not visible. The system is like this. You know, you can have a lot of money to shoot in France or to shoot, and you spend a lot of money in technicians or in whatever that you don't need and that don't have any influence on the quality of the film, or have little influence or totally disproportionate influence because of the cost of what you will see on the screen. So sometimes, I don't know, it's not linked, the idea of a budget of a film, even with the I don't know, the spectacular side of the images. It's a matter of, you know, politics, internal economic politics of every country. And then, okay.
Co-producers.
Yeah, co-producers, obviously all films are co-productions and don't have the rules. And so this is the main issue to solve, maybe nowadays. Of course, always more money means more possibilities. That's obvious. But not in the proportionate way that you could imagine. So the fight, even if all my co-producers say, you can do whatever you want, you know, and they will never touch a comma of what I decide, or they will never ask, this has to be 5 minutes. Of course they see the edit or different versions of the edit. They don't give me some opinion or advice or whatever, but now I decide and they are happy always with what I decide. But I cannot oblige them to put the money in where I want. They will put the money in the film, but not in where I want. So this is the main fight on the financing of the films. And of course, getting the money, it's already always difficult. You never know. Some films get easier. Some films go on the right path. It depends on a lot of things. There is still a lot of, in my case, you may be working with more documentary approach. It's different, but in my case, the stars are very important for financing the film. So you have to find the right star. The right star, that is the right star to get the finance, but the right star to get a good film. For example, we're talking about Leos Carax, and I think that I don't like the casting very much of the last film. I think it's not, I don't know, it's, Adam Driver, I don't like it, Marion Cotillard, it doesn't matter. It's two actors I don't like. Yeah. My opinion, personal opinion, I think it's a bad idea of casting. Probably, I don't know, whether it was the first decision or not, maybe, when you have this amount, such a huge amount of money, you need this kind of thing, I don't know. But these tensions are already there. But okay, what is important is that the film, somehow will be done with decisions of casting. You will be able to take with total freedom. I think this is the most important thing for me. And now, especially now that I like to mix, professional actors, even if I can, some star or one star, with non-professional, with friends, with totally heterogeneous and diverse. So here there is also a lot of tensions always to deal with this kind of casting. But if you can have the right decision in casting, then okay, the process, I have ideas. I don't decide the film I will do. I mean, I have 2 or 3 ideas. I ask people around, people that work with me. Of course, it's, as you said, good to have a, faithful crew or people that work with you. They understand things. You can go faster and easily. I always like to pick up new people just to make it, the playful side of it. And but for me it's very important that it's funny, the shooting and everything, because if not I don't get in.
I agree.
If not, I am sorry, I don't want to, for the reason I will never do it in 35, because it's boring to shoot in, if you shoot a film in 35, it's extremely boring, in fact. If you do it, it's because you will be able to choose the casting, to include some people you like, and to do it in your own way. And I think that somehow this way of doing it, it has direct influence on what you will see at the end on the screen, and so
the atmosphere is what you're saying. The atmosphere on the set has to be great. It has to be fun. Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Yeah, because it creates elements. It's a disruptive element, A playful atmosphere in the shooting, really playful shooting that that puts on risk, the serious professional approach. It's something that is interesting, I think, with modern cinema, because all the faith you have on images, or also at this level of working with actor, persona, actor, character, only at this level, the playful side is so disruptive, it's so strange, it's so amazing, how this can transform everything in something more fascinating, with much more layers. At the level of atmosphere and the complexity of atmosphere and the inner uncertainty of, uncertain, tonality of the images that people don't know. It's a potential that they really, because of professionalism, people think that you have to take it seriously, because of course there is a lot of technicians and a lot of people that has to be coordinated, and especially in fiction films, maybe you have more freedom, but people, think that, all these things, if they are not in a professional. For example, I never wake up in my film, unless we have to shoot 7 in the morning because of the sun. All my films, we all wake up at 8:30, 9. We start shooting always 10.
So there's no sunrise in your...
No. Well, if there is sunrise that day, we wake up. But in general, for example, my schedule, it's always 9. 9:30. Then we start arriving to the place, not before. Why? Who says you have to do it before? I don't know. It's an absolute rule, It's an absolute rule, it's a professional rule You have the same hour, it's more, you are more quiet. We prefer to, to make the long journey at the end where, it's more night ambience and people have some drinks at the very end of the day of the shooting. So for me, it's much more, I don't know, strange to work this day. This way, I'm used to it. I don't need to wake up at 6. You wake up at 6 and nobody is inspired. Actors are not inspired at 9 in the morning.
So I know
Do you know any actor inspired at 9 in the morning? I don't know any.
No, but I know one thing.
So,
I know one thing about you now is you're never going to make a remake of More Now Sunrise.
well, if it's necessary, we will wake up. And I have to shoot night scenes. I mean, we do what it's necessary. But I mean, if it's not necessary, I mean, why? Why?
Yeah.
I never met an actor more inspired at 9 in the morning than at 9 p.m. Never in my life. So why people want to shoot at 9 in the morning? It's totally absurd. I mean, I don't see the point.
I agree with you.
Well, why don't they do it? So it's this kind of freedom we are saying that you take decisions that will have influence on the film, but direct influence on what you see on the screen. And this is a very important issue. It's quite difficult to convince producers to start 9:30 because they never did it before, and to start at 10. They never did it before, and okay.
Because it has to be 15-hour days, in their minds.
Yeah, but you can do 15 hours and finishing later.
Yeah.
But at 9 p.m., people, it's more inspired. It's starting the night. I don't know. People feel in a different mood, so it's different. So it's better, and but convince people that it has no cost, because it's the same thing to start at 9 that to start at 6. Or to start at 10, to start at 6 and finish 4 hours late. It's the same cost, basically. It's it's a mindset up, and these are very important decisions. Yeah, then there is other decisions. I don't know. All my decisions are all usually linked with inspirational factors. That is really what I follow. Usually you don't use this word inspiration to talk with actors. About actors, because you think that they are so professional that you prepare everything, they just arrive when it's the moment that everything is prepared and they deliver their professional, performance. But who cares about this? I mean, if one day, if they are not inspired, why do you want him to be there on time? If what he will deliver is not, special. Yeah. It's better to be late and to deliver something special than to be on time with nothing special. This is how to create the atmosphere, and this is Warhol teaching. How to create the atmosphere around. You don't direct, or at least in my experience, and coming to the second act, I never direct the film on set. I never. I am there, but all my system is based in non-communication. I almost don't talk with actors. I don't talk with technicians. I mean, if I watch the image, I never watch one single image of my film before the end of the shooting. Never in my life. So there is no combo, there is no images. Okay, cinematographer check some images in the computer.
Do you always do one take then, or do you do
what?
Do you always do one take, or you do multiple takes?
No, multiple takes, but never the same. Always with variation.
Okay.
Always changing.
So it's not because something didn't necessarily work or whatever. It's just for you. It's about variations.
I do a lot, and I always use 3 cameras since the very beginning. This is my setup.
Okay.
So, but I don't direct the film there. There, everything has to be done already. You have to create the atmosphere before, maybe some hours before, 1 week before, 1 month before.
Do you rehearse then?
Never in my life. It's boring. It's like, have you ever seen a football match that it's not in a championship? That it's just this. That
practice,
they do before the start of Nobody sees it. It's super boring. Yeah. It's the same with the set rehearsals. It's boring. Who wants to watch a film at tennis?
Well, there's that 6-hour Beatles documentary, right? What is it called?
Get Back?
Yeah.
About?
It's just the
Beatles rehearsing.
Get Back. Yeah, it's the Peter Jackson edited.
I don't know, but I mean, it's very strange to explain this, because it's linked with this idea of this potential of the camera of capturing things that you cannot control, that are out of your control, out of your eye, that are non-visible for the eye. So why you are there trying to control if it's if it's not visible by definition.
So it becomes, I'm actually really interested in this idea of the eye of the camera and what's not visible to you, to the naked eye. Is it, you're talking about details that you're noticing after the fact? Okay.
Of course, it's much more, you are used to this analytical approach.
Yeah.
Because your films are based with taking an analysis, analytical approach of images of other films, and how these affect us, or how we see hidden things in these images, how this connects, or how this spreads to audience. So, for example, if I make, I don't know, a close-up of her face, here, you are looking at me, I do a close-up, during 20 minutes, for example, no? And
20-minute close-up.
Yeah, 20-minute close-up. I don't know. I will get tired. Even if I am very concentrated, I will not be able to concentrate in your face during 10-20 minutes. I hear the sound. It distracts me. I think it distracts me. I see the whole thing. I see the audience, I see other people. But the camera, no. The camera, for example, will be 20 minutes here, will not get tired, will not hear the sound, will not have ideas. So the insightful, capacity of the camera, shooting the eye of the camera, shooting her face, it's much more powerful than my eye. I cannot compete with that. I do not have enough concentration, it's simple. Then, okay, I pick up these 20 minutes, then I go to the computer, and I will do what you do. I watch and watch and watch this thing. I said, look at here. Here there is an interesting moment. Here she's looking in a very, the eyes. Here it's, look. Or now, here there is no tension. It's over. Here, no. Maybe. Or what do you think? And you think and you start, seeing, making visible things that were not visible because you were not enough. So it's too sophisticated to be able to find these things during the shooting process. It's impossible.
I agree.
Sorry, but on the other side, for example, human eyes are better for example, the camera has not aesthetic taste. My eyes have aesthetic taste, so I can make good compositions. The camera can judge good or bad compositions. I don't know. I can predict movement. I can predict things. Camera doesn't predict anything. So human eyes are good for some things. Even in the shooting process, they are capable of doing some things better than the eye of a camera. But most of the details and the grid details that in big screen, with the grid combination of images on the edit, etc. And this is only possible after an analytical process, similar to you, what you do, but with my own images. So, but as I was not very aware when I was directing the film there, because I am there, but for example, in my films, if I see what they are doing on the set, I never hear the sound. I go very far and never use earphones. And if sometimes I want to hear what they say, I turn back and I don't want to see what they do. So I never have the whole, never in my life, or in last films, I never want to have the whole thing, or either the sound, either the image, but not both. Well, it's my idea. It works for me because I trust, the eye of the camera. For me, it's enough to have sensations, to have, the feeling. Sometimes I ask to the camera because I have 3 cameramen, because I use very small crew. In fact, I have only. My films can be expensive because sometimes it's complicated setup. But on set we have 3 cameras, cinematographer that prepares light. Okay, but here it's operating 1 camera, so we have 3 cameras. Last film was Black Magic Pocket, the cheapest one. With the zoom, always with the zoom. I never use one single fixed lens in my life, because it's boring. Because you have to move the camera and you lose a lot of time. And, even the most expert cinematographer cannot see the difference between an image shooted by zoom lenses and a fixed lenses. They can bet you whatever you want. And especially with the post-production you can apply nowadays. So, only with the fucking sharpness, you cannot, it's impossible. They cannot see the difference if it's shooted with fixed lenses or zoom lenses. I bet you whatever you want. We can do blind test wherever with whoever you want. Applying post-production, huh? Impossible. So why they use fixed lenses, cinematographers? Tell me.
I don't know. My mind is obsessed with that too. So it's their thing.
It's completely absurd. So what I said, just to finish, 3 people that the cinematographer is operating one camera, and there is 2 more operators. No assistants. 0 assistants for the cameras in the whole shooting. They all of the 3 take care of their own tripod, camera, lenses. They pack. They do whatever is needed every day. No assistants. 0. 0 means 0 assistants. No assistants. And 2 or 3 sound people. Mostly 3, sometimes 2, but usually 3. So 3 camera, 3 assistants. Okay, then there is light and all the technicians of lighting and all this thing. But on the set, when everything is ready, you know, there is always the 3 cameramen, me, and the actors, and nobody else. You know, people is useless when you have this, you know, and you really are in deep. So it means that somehow it's very simple.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think, without getting too much into the weeds, but going back to what you were talking about, these sort of bigger productions, you know, half of the people there, you wonder what they're even doing there. I mean, I'm also a believer in small crews.
I never met one single actor in my life that with more people on the set, they were performing better. Never. Always better with less people. Because they concentrate more. It's very, very quite rare that an actor with more audience, you know, bothering or looking or whatever, gets bigger. In general, can get bigger in the sense that can pretend to make something more, but it's always more vulgar. You know, on the subtle side, on the precision side, on the concentration side, less people, better.
So then maybe transitioning into our third act.
Mm-hmm.
How do you then, because it's an interesting idea of, you know, there is this unpredictability about what happens and what control you can take over, but how do you set up your teams then, whether it's your performers, and that includes, you know, commentators and just any subject in front of the camera, but who is on your team, and how do you, you know, secure that experience that you want to create?
Well, for me, again, the process is obviously very different, and also each film is very different. The last 2 that I've made were products of the pandemic, so those were the first films that I did where all the people that I've interviewed were not on camera. So I had to, you know, find a way to, you know, just talk to them obviously remotely and using their voices, which I thought was, I actually really have enjoyed the process, because then you're working with purely footage, purely clip work over their voices. So I don't know. I mean, I think that particular process, I think, for me is also, it sounds maybe a little bit similar to what you're doing in some way, in the sense that it's very intuitive. Like, if I'm interviewing somebody, and for me you know, you can prepare all you want, but at the end of the day, when you're sitting down for a 3-hour or 4-hour interview, I will maybe read the first couple of questions and I put the questions down, and then we go back and forth. Because at the end of the day, yeah, of course you want to be prepared. And I'll tell you a story in a minute, which sort of relates to this. But to me, it's about tapping into what the person wants to give you, even if sometimes the person doesn't know what they want to give you. You know, when we were doing Lynch Oz, I had filmmakers who were willing to go down the rabbit hole with me of exploring the potential connections, conscious and unconscious, between David Lynch and The Wizard of Oz. Beyond that, they were not prepared. They didn't know where they wanted to go. I didn't really know where I wanted to go, but I sort of followed that. And there's a point in the interview which is completely intuitive, and it can happen at 90 minutes, it can happen at 150 minutes or more, where I feel like, okay, you've given me what I needed. It's enough. And then, you know, I guess that's my little eye of the camera. Like, I feel like the camera has captured what I need, and now I need to go back and I need to sort of go through that material and figure out what I need to tell that particular story. That said, the preparation, and I'm going to tell you this one story, is also different in certain projects. So I made a film on The Exorcist with William Friedkin, and it's very specifically, it was 6 days of interviews with Friedkin, one-on-one. But, you know, even though the idea was to sort of crack open The Exorcist, every scene, every sequence, every technique, every, you know, moment, even though there was a lot of improvisation, I still had to really find a way to prepare myself for this. And for me, so I went in Northern California on a vineyard, beautiful like Airbnb with a view on the vineyard. And my preparation for a month it was just me, my notebook, and The Exorcist. So I had to have a routine, and it had to counterbalance the horror and the intensity of The Exorcist, which it's a hard film to watch over and over and over. But so I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning, which is too early for you, every morning, and I would drive in the fog by the Potter School where Hitchcock shot the birds, went on a long walk by the beach to kind of really get my system going, went to get my latte, went to the Airbnb, watched The Exorcist, and then start writing notes on whatever sort of came up to me that day. And I did that every day for 30 days. And so letting that particular film washing over me over and over and over again, you start seeing new things every single time. And
you don't direct the film at the moment you were doing the interview.
That's right.
All this preparation is...
It's exactly, yeah. So in a way, it's very different, but it's very similar. Yeah.
And you have good examples, you know, for me, the master of this idea of interviewing Shoah, you know, it's one of the best examples of, you know, how you can get really, really something, you know, with this, or Winifred Wagner in a totally opposite ideology by Silverberg, you know, are maybe the two films where you can really get something from the interviews that, you know, it was not expected. Is you know, is this what you say? You are prepared. You want to be prepared. You want to incite an atmosphere before, but then you forget it totally because you follow intuition somehow. You try to, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the main point. For example, this is a huge discussion always with producers because it costs money. But I always want all the actors during the whole shooting ready every day. And I decide which actor will shoot every day, the day before, at night, or sometimes the same day in the morning. But they have to be there all the time. So obviously, Magimel, the main character of the film, we shoot every day. But in general, all the others, no. So it's also this matter of, I don't know, feeling things, intuition. Okay, of course the setup and the decors are prepared because we have to shoot here or there. But I don't know which actor will perform in that place. You know, because the elasticity of the system, it's enough big to allow that I can, you know, I cannot, you know, fire Magimel, the main actor, but, you know, I can make a lot of different variations of a lot of things and really adapt to it. Somehow it's a similar, in fact, I always thought that my methodology was closer to documentary methodology than, in fact.
Well, it sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah, so for me it was very easy. And to answer your question, that it's an interesting question, no? Who you trust, or you know, who is you know, supporting you somehow during the process. It's I don't know about you because maybe you have a smaller crew, or
oh yeah.
But I think it's a very interesting question because in the shooting, you want people that somehow can reassess what you are doing in an objective way to help. You know,
yes.
If there is something that people feel that, okay, or this actor is not so good, or, you know, somebody, maybe my producer that is used to my style or whatever, says, Albert, do you think that she's performing well, or do you like the way she does it, or, you know, questions like this. And maybe then you suddenly say, why do you say this? Why do you ask this? Oh, no, because whatever, no? Sure. You want these people around also, people you trust to put, if necessary, these kind of questions. But at the same time, you don't want them. You know, because, you know, it's difficult to express in a different way, but somehow you want to be like a dictator because you want to hear people that say that everything you do is good. Because it's important for the psychology of the team and the flow. of the thing. So it's a strange balance, very, very strange, subtle balance. Maybe it's the same for you in the interviews. When the interview go on the right way, when it doesn't go, there is not, it's a matter of confidence that it's very important because you never know when great things will appear.
I agree.
This is the main point. So confidence is necessary because without confidence and without actors feeling confidence, there is no possibility. They can feel tension. They can feel a lot of pressure. They can feel even violence of this pressure. I like it because it puts intensity, and I think that with violence, psychological violence, the intensity of the images is always bigger, stronger. From my opinion, I don't think that in a collaborative process you can find the same kind of intensity. I never found another solution. I mean, maybe it exists, but if it's not that, you can only put tension if you put pressure, and you cannot fake pressure. So.
I mean, it sounds like what's really interesting is, in a way, what you're saying, and I think maybe one of the conclusions to draw from this is that maybe the role of the director in some way is to do whatever is necessary to not force but enable those magical moments that you cannot prepare or conceive to happen when they do, and that everything that we do is about making those moments happen.
Totally agree.
Right?
Totally agree.
And I'll tell you one more thing on this, because for whatever reason my mind keeps going back to that film, the William Friedkin film. For me, that magical moment was after a year of preparation and conversations with him and lunches with him and whatever. On day 4 of the interviews, and I think that goes exactly to what you were saying, we were on break, and out of the blue, for whatever reason that I still don't even understand, he said, "Did I tell you about the Kyoto Zen Gardens?" No. Okay, roll camera. And so you're thinking immediately, I was like, well, what's the connection between The Exorcist and the Kyoto Zen Gardens? And he started launching into this monologue about going to Kyoto 30 years ago and being moved to tears, and he started crying on camera, William Friedkin, on camera. Just imagine that. And as this was unfolding, I mean, these are the moments that I live for, because as this was unfolding, I thought two things. Like, on the spot, I thought, okay, this is the end of the film. This is the ending of the film, number one, which I had not planned for. And then number two, oh shit, we have to find a way to go to Kyoto, and we don't have the money for it. So we had to find a way to do that. But those are, that's also is a result, a direct result of all the preparation and everything even before. And then, if you're lucky enough, then this magic will happen.
But you trust that there were real tears or crocodile tears?
No, you should watch the film. I'll send it to you.
So I think this is a great resolution to lead into a Q&A.
Real tears and crocodile tears, the magic of cinema. It's in between,
that's right.
these two.
Yeah.
So let's open this up to the audience. Questions? Don't be shy.
No questions.
I think you answered it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you like Tarantino, Albert?
Yes, Tarantino is an interesting filmmaker, somehow. He made very interesting films, and I respect him because he did some, but also very bad films. So it's like, it's the best you can do in Hollywood nowadays, that you try, and sometimes it goes well, and sometimes he has total freedom. He's the only one that he has the final cut on total freedom, so he really can do whatever he wants. But, I don't know, it's very irregular from my point of view. I don't know. I like a lot of his films. I like Pulp Fiction very much. I think it's a great film. I like the third one also, Jackie Brown. I like the one with the car, that it's very good. But then, for example, first film, it's terrible. And I don't know, The Hateful Eight, it's one of the worst films I ever seen in my life. So, and he was reading the script everywhere. And apparently it was this one, that they published the script before the film was done. I said, how this guy can go to the places and, make a reading of this bullshit script, that is, you know, incredible. And the one that was promoting as the greatest script is the worst film. What comes usually in filmmaking, and documentary filmmakers did know this better than anybody else, you know. It doesn't matter what you plan, what reality what will give you. And now, you know, Godard died, and he always said, you know, there is, you know, two kind of filmmakers. The ones that, you know, that shoot with the camera, and the ones that shoot with the projector. You know, it means that the ones who shoot with the camera, that they are focused on what is in front of the camera. And the ones who shoot with the projector, that it's what is behind the camera, what means what you have in your mind, and you want to project. But the projector doesn't record. So it means that you have to shoot with the camera, and you have to shoot what is in front of the camera, not what is behind in your mind. So I think that documentary filmmakers are very aware that, as you said, you cannot predict these moments, and a lot of these films, so it doesn't matter how good is or your script or whatever, the film is bullshit. So, and this is the reality. But okay, then he made, I haven't seen the last one, this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I haven't seen it, so interesting maybe, I don't know. But you know, this one In the War was interesting because of the mix of tonality, of comedy, you know, in the Second World War, the one in the
The Inglourious Basterds?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting comedy things.
That's my
mix,
favorite.
yeah.
That's my favorite Tarantino.
Yes.
Actually, that and Pulp Fiction. Actually, are my two.
It's the best, you know, America can give us. That's for sure. In that sense of big films.
Yeah.
On big films, you know, everything else it's like superheroes and what I said are childish films, and at least this is not childish, and you know. So I think it's interesting, and I don't know. I have some friends that were you know spent some days with him in Madrid, and he's playing me crazy things about him. So I respect him. No, he's a fanatic, a real fanatic. You know, he's only focused on cinema and serious stuff. I mean, he doesn't care about anything else.
And Albert, going to Spanish, for example, Almodóvar.
I don't know very well the films. It's not the kind of films I would like, but I like him because I respect him because he did the same thing all over, you know, again and again, and he imposed his own style to people. He never changed. He never adapted to the world. He simply made, you know, his own film and imposing to people his own aesthetics and his own imaginary and his own world. He never conceded, and so I like him for that. I respect him for that. You know, all the other people wants to adapt and wants to be successful, but he got it without changing, so without doing anything special for the audience. So, well, maybe putting a little bit less interesting actors in the casting in recent films, but apart from that, it's the same thing. So I like him.
And Woody Allen?
I don't think it's cinema. This. I will not call it cinema. It's another thing. I don't know what, but not cinema for sure. Stand-up comedy transformed. You know, shoot it by a camera with something. I don't know.
Any other questions?
Can I?
Question for Alexandre. I really liked when you were talking about your kind of formative experiences as a cinephile and watching films as a child. It reminds me of this amazing line from a book by a French art historian called Jean-Louis Chiffet, who mentions the films that watched us during our childhood. Being watched, not just watching films, but being watched. But I'm wondering if you ever found when returning to some of those films something unexpected or something that shattered your illusion, something ugly in the way that Albert was talking about these kind of ugly experiences in cinema, something that, you know, rather than feeling like you were going back home, shocked you or surprised you in a bad way.
I don't know in a bad way, but films that have sort of shaken me to the core. Beyond, you know, Eyes Without a Face, obviously, which was a super early memory. I actually had a very interesting. So obviously, I make a lot of films about horror movies. So it's no surprise that I love horror films. But the other one I can think of, and interestingly enough, this was not, because we were talking about this earlier. This was not a theatrical experience. This was an at-home watching on DVD film by myself, and it really freaked me out. And I had waited and waited and waited to watch the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Because I knew I was going to be really upset by it. I knew about the fact that there was no music. I knew about, I'd seen just snippets. Just, that kind of horror is very, very disturbing to me. So I watched it on DVD for the first time by myself. And about halfway through the film, this never happens to me, I had to stop it. I could not handle it. I mean, it's a brilliant movie. And I'm not talking in terms of, I had to stop it because it's a bad movie. I had to stop it because it was so powerful to me, just watching it on a small screen, that I just, when the camera goes into the eye, and it's just, she's screaming, screaming, and screaming, and it's so real, and there's nowhere to go. I mean, gosh, that opening sequence where, Leatherface just grabs her and just puts her on the meat hook. I mean, with no embellishment, no music, nothing. You're in for absolute horror, and there's nowhere to go. So I stopped it. I had to just, take a breath. I had to go for a walk, and then I went back and I finished the film. I waited years to actually go back and actually watch it, and then they had the restoration a few years ago. And I was at a festival in Norway, and they were showing it on film, so I had to go watch it, and I proudly was able to watch it all the way through, and that was one of those experiences. I don't know that I ever want to go back to that film. It's an unbelievable movie. I mean, talk about these images that are seared into, when you watch them, how can you possibly forget Leatherface at the end of the film when they escape, just holding this, brandishing the chainsaw in the setting sun. Is there a greater image of absolute madness that you cannot comprehend? It's terrifying. I mean, that to me is horror. Like, there's very few films that I feel like is just sort of this undiluted horror from which you cannot escape, and I think that's one of those films.
I think we have time for one more.
Okay. Can we say that the common thing about your cinema is a really strong appreciation of the image and a really strong voyeurism? Because it's a really different approach. Maybe for Mr. Serra, it's a voyeurism of the flesh, of the blood, of the bodies, and yours is a more a voyeurism about the image that was an image before. So I want to just know about this idea of voyeurism in your cinema.
Yes, I think so. Of course, I mean, because it's a matter of curiosity somehow, you are intrigued a little bit by how people will react, and you enjoy it, and you are part of it. Of course, you are responsible of it, and at the same time, you are obliged to make the actors deliver something interesting. But, okay, there is a passive way of, just being there in a little bit pervert way in order to put pressure on them and see how do they solve the situation. And I think that it's interesting because I don't know, you never know, as you said before, how they will react, where the magic will appear, in which conditions this will be interesting or will be boring or vulgar or banal or really, complex and fascinating. It's difficult to predict. And in my case, I never made rehearsal because the whole film is a rehearsal somehow. It's a process of, I like to use the word performance, the idea that the whole film is a permanent performance of different elements that are there, and with this a little bit voyeuristic and sadic approach. It's one of the cliches of filmmaking, but it's true, I think, because then, okay, I don't know, somehow as a filmmaker, you share the risk, All my films, or all the way I direct actors, it's the idea of put them in a situation of vulnerability. For me, vulnerability is the only it's the only open door to innocence, you know, because if without vulnerability, actors, you know, they will never open door to innocence again. They are too much in control. So what I do basically is to push whatever is needed to, you know, make them lose control of their image, you know. And of course the 3 cameras help, because the zoom lenses help, because they don't know what you are shooting, and very long shots, and non-communication, and blah, blah, blah. So they really feel abandoned. I never told to them, they really feel abandoned. And when you feel abandoned, then you start, you know, vulnerability appears, because you cannot control your image. It's the system, it's too heavy, it's too abrasive. Because you cannot control 3 cameras, you cannot control during 45-minute shot, you cannot be tense all the time controlling your image for 3 cameras with zoom lenses, moving all the time with independent changing places, nobody talking to you. You know, you lose.
Yeah.
You know, you cannot fight against it. So, and then when this vulnerability appears, then, okay, there is a door open to new innocence. For me, it's a very important concept. Because as we are living in times with Netflix and all these things that are totally formatted image, where everybody is in control of everything, when you really feel that somebody is, you know, really abandoned, but when I mean really abandoned, it means really abandoned in front of the camera, then something new and interesting start to happen. And for me, that's the point of where I try to always, you know, when I know by experience, statistically, that at that moment it's when interesting things appear. You know, more or less in one direction or another, or I cannot predict everything. But I know that when they are really, you know, extremely... I did a film that was my previous film, Liberté, was the whole film with quite outrageous, explicit sex. So, and you know, when you shoot with naked people, this is even more visible. The idea of vulnerability, of course, I don't know any actor in the world that naked becomes stronger than, you know, that undress, you know, became stronger than dress. No, they became, all of them, more vulnerable. So then everything becomes more graphic. All this process of innocence and vulnerability and, you know, the way they find resources when you are totally naked, even doing outrageous things. It's very, you know, you see how the game is played. You see it. You cannot hide it. It's too strong to hide it. So then you understand how the thing works, and you can apply the same things with then to other films, other moments, dress, but the concept is the same. And I think that for me it's these 2 things: intensity of the images, that it means that only grows up with pressure. It means that if they are under pressure, the image will be more intense for me, and vulnerability to allow some kind of new innocence appear, because they lost control of their image. For me, these are the 2 key points that, but of course you need 2 things maybe, some kind of authority to be there, and at the same time you have to share risks, and somehow, because they have to understand, and they have to know that you are, even if you are not in front of the camera, you are sharing the same kind of risk, because when you enter these territories, you never know that if the film will be good or bad, and they have to see that you don't care about. We are not working for the, you know, for the audience to get rich or to get successful or to anything else. You know, we are taking as a filmmaker the same kind of risk they are taking in front of a camera, but from behind. You know, they have to feel that, and I think that with 2 conditions, and of course the playful side of it, that it has to be there. Of course, the tension has to be mixed a little bit with some other. For the reason, for example, is what I said. I start at 9:30. You know, if I start at 6:30 and start putting pressure at 6:30, it doesn't work. You know, it has to be a little bit more. You know, it has to be more. In somehow, it's more pervert, because then it allows to put more pressure and it's more. You know what I mean? But it's a strange, you know, giving and receiving. Giving, being generous in some moments to grab things, and being egoist. Yeah.
If they're awake and well fed, whatever, like, then they should be able to handle the pressure at that point.
It's
they have no excuse.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
but okay. No, and it's always just to, you know, it's very interesting, because how can you get unknown images or unknown atmospheres, or how can you put an actor inside an unknown territory? It's very difficult. If it's unknown, it means that he has never get in before. Right. So it means that how can you do it? You know, you have to put pressure, you have to push, because nobody gets in to unknown territories, you know, in an easy way, in a funny way. You know, it's something that it's dangerous. It's dangerous because you don't know it, so you are scared. You don't know exactly how. You know, it's very. So it's and how do you know that it's an unknown territory? You know, it's because you are totally, you know, out of control. So it's this, you know, it's this border or this point of going through to get something different, something new, something unknown for anybody, but at the same time, of course, being careful, because it's, but I don't know, how to create unknown images without getting in unknown territories, psychological, even visual. I don't know how to do it if it's not this way.
This is definitely a cliffhanger to leave off from. But that will then conclude our masterclass for today. But just to sit tight, we need to shift some things around here to continue with our award ceremony.
Yep.
So thank you so much for sitting with us.
Thank you
and
so
spending
much.
time with us.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone.